Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along to the webinar that we're hosting, our first webinar from PMO Learning. And today's topic, which is going to be lasting for about an hour, is about the new AI PMO certifications for PMO professionals. And just before we get started, just a few little bits of housekeeping. The slides, slide deck and the recording will be available after the session, and it will be available through the website PMO Learning. Before that, let me go to there are there's some things down the side of your screen which you're able to going through this session. If you can write down your questions, we will answer them as we go through. And towards the end of the webinar session, we'll also be answering some of them. So some of them will get answered, but we will be putting the questions to the people that are presenting today. And also throughout this session, there's a couple of polls that we'd like to take part in as well. And basically, we'll be able to share those results of what other people that are also listening to the session will be able to see what other people are also thinking. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you through to Eileen Roden. She's going to be kicking off the session today. And Eileen, take it away.
So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome from a cold Switzerland at the moment, though I do believe London is even colder than we are over here. So I just want to say hello from myself. So my name's Eileen Roden. I'll just try and move the slides along as we go. My name's Eileen Roden. I am one of the directors of PMO Learning, along with Lindsay, and I'm also joined today by Dr. Robert Joslin, who is the one of the founding members of AI PMO. So I'll just let Robert introduce himself, and then you get used to hearing his voice as well. Are you there?
Okay, hello there. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robert Joslin, and I'm one of the co-founders of AI PMO. Some of you may be aware of when I was actually in the UK. I used to work for the British government, and I was actually working on the predecessor for the Prince 2. I've got sort of several years' experience in the areas of being a practitioner, running projects, programs, and portfolios in different countries. I'm currently based in Switzerland. I also am a professor where I write research papers, and I'm the editor of 3 magazines, research magazines. So what you'll hear, partly from this session, but also in the future, if you're involved a lot with PMO Learning and AI PMO, is a lot of research findings that will come out, and you'll hear more about how we go and do that later on when Arlene presents that. So welcome, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So I just want to tell you a little bit about PMO Learning first. If we just grab the slide over from PMO Learning. We've set this up, Lindsay and I set this up very recently, having spent lots of time in the industry, both from being a PMO practitioner, but also being a trainer and a consultant. And as some of you may know me as author of the P3O Best Management Practice in the UK, Lindsay and I also look after the PMO Flash Mob. We decided there was a real kind of gap in the marketplace for pulling together certification aimed specifically at those who are involved from a PMO perspective. Now, whether that's from an individual who just works in a PMO, somebody who manages a PMO, or somebody like a PMO director who oversees multiple PMOs that sit across the organisation. So PMO Learning is a new organisation that's set up specifically to do that. So if you kind of follow Flashmob, you'll probably have seen that set up. So I just want to have a quick introduction to AI PMO. I just want to pull up the very first poll that we've got, just to see if anybody has actually heard of AI PMO. There we go. There's the poll. If we could just kind of click on one of those 4 options about whether you've actually heard of AI PMO before. So you might have heard the kind of never heard of it at all, which is just interest in this presentation. Whether you've heard of them but you're not really sure who they are, whether you know a little bit about them and their certifications, or actually you actually know about them, and today is about just kind of reinforcing that. So if I can get you to submit your answers, and then perhaps Lindsay can close the poll and we can find out kind of who we have across the scene in that. So there we go. So a lot of people who are actually kind of on the call today have not actually heard of AI PMO. So hopefully we'll give you a quick introduction of that, and a couple of you who know about them and heard a little bit about the certifications, and we have a small number on there who actually know about the certifications as well. I suspect that is some of our colleagues in some of the partner organisations. So great to have you on board to support us. So just want a quick introduction into AI PMO. This is I suppose, a relatively new professional organisation that's been set up specifically around, as I say, PMO individuals, and their mission, or our mission, is to advance the understanding, the theory, design and implementation of high-performing enterprise PMOs. Interesting in terms of, we had this kind of conversation around enterprise PMOs. That's not just looking at organisation-wide PMOs, but actually any PMO that sits in an organisation. It's really about kind of driving and make sure that PMOs are high-performing regardless of what industry they sit in and wherever they sit within the organisation, and really driving a kind of a certification program based around this, what we call the AI PMO body of knowledge. And we'll come on to the body of knowledge shortly in terms of its breadth and depth. But I just want to, as Robert's here with us, I just want to ask Robert, why did you start the AI PMO? What need did you see, Robert, that drove the setup?
You can hear me now. Good. I'm unmuted. I'm back. So the reason I actually set up AI PMO, and I think this is probably the reason why many people are on this call, is that PMOs have a huge potential impact on projects, programs, and of course portfolios. And the thing is, what I've seen around the world, having taught it, and what I've experienced as well, is that very few people actually understand the direct impact of PMOs on success, or program success, or even portfolio success. And also the understanding of what the potential PMOs can do is also limited. And so this is where, when I moved from being a practitioner and I went more into the academic world, so I actually did my PhD on methodologies and the impact of methodologies on project success. I also worked with a number of professors who looked at PMO research. And what this research does is actually provides you with an objective view of findings, or that if you understand and actually have access to this, you actually realize the impact you can actually have on PMOs. So I set the AI PMO up with the other professors with the aim of actually promoting the understanding, but also using research where we can actually take the research and feed it into the standard, and then disseminate this through certification courses, through the PMO flash mobs, so focus groups, as well as allowing a career in PMOs. So it really goes back to the mission statement. We saw the need, but doing the academic research opened my eyes to what isn't actually done in the practitioner world, because it takes 7 years to get this academic research into a practitioner world, and how we actually sort of tie the two and how to reinforce it. So that was the basis. Okay.
And I think what is interesting in terms of, as Lindsay and I were looking around at what needed to be done around PMOs and driving the profession and careers in PMOs, we came across AI PMO and have now been working with Robert for over a year to get things established. And some of the things that have really kind of driven us to take these AI PMO certifications and kind of really kind of drive them through the UK is just the recognition of the breadth and depth of research and practitioner experience that there is that we can kind of draw on to improve the practice within the UK. So I just want to take you over the next couple of slides. It's a bit just around the structure of AI PMO, which again gives this understanding of the breadth of PMO information we have access to, being one of the delivery partners. So if we just kind of go through the first slide in terms of seeing that overall structure. And we've got an AI PMO board and a couple of councils in there, a management team, and a number of different partners. And we'll just kind of take you through these kind of one at a time. And I am just going to flick through these kind of quite quickly because I really just want to give you a flavour of where the AI PMO is in terms of its structure. So the first one, which we just kind of flicked back through a bit too quickly, the first one is at the AI PMO board level. So that's myself, Robert, and Dr. Mueller, who really kind of oversee what happens within AI PMO and watch how it kind of continues to develop. We have an management team who really look after the whole of the kind of the administration. That's all of the kind of the nuts and bolts to make sure we've got the exams, etc. already. When we get to the kind of the couple of more interesting aspects of AI PMO, if we go on to the next slide and look at the academic council. So this is led by Dr. Mueller, who chairs this. And this is a number of individuals, potentially, well, not potentially, who are all kind of professors who are leading the kind of the research into PMOs and the impact it has on organisations. So some of you might recognise some of those names. Ralph is particularly strong and published on governance, and those of you who kind of know some of the older research on and some of the founding research on PMO functions and services was done by Monique Aubrey, so you might kind of recognise those names. And the role they play in AI PMO is kind of twofold, really. One is about actually kind of overseeing and kind of keeping abreast of all of the research that's taking place out there at the moment on PMOs, and also kind of some of the related areas, some of the research that's taken place into kind of project program management. Actually interesting, some of the research that's taken place in terms of strategy development and delivery. Obviously that has an impact on how that comes down into kind of portfolios. But also what they're doing is driving some of the research. So the professors who sit on the academic council oversee numbers of master students and PhD students, and therefore they can kind of drive and set up some of those areas where it needs kind of further research. And a couple of examples that are kind of taking place at the moment is things like a kind of PMO maturity model. So there is no kind of single accepted model at the moment for driving PMO maturity, recognising exactly the link to project management success. So all of that is currently being researched. If we go down to the Practitioner Council and look at what the Practitioner Council do, this is kind of the other side of that coin. So what we're looking for from a Practitioner Council is people who are actually on the ground doing the role at the moment, and taking some of the findings that are coming from the research and actually look at how it's actually kind of being used in practice. The other thing that is really important from the Practitioner Council, if somebody can just move my slide on, it's there we go, brilliant. So the other thing around the Practitioner Council is this access to focus groups. So there's a lot of things that are kind of coming out of research or being theorised. We really want to kind of understand what that means in practice. And it's really been interesting in terms of some of the work that the PMO Flash Mob have been involved in this year around looking at the principles, which was a book that was published by AI PMO earlier this year. So currently there's myself and Mark Price-Perry, who some of you might recognise from the States, and we're actually looking to get another couple of people on the Practitioner Council representing us. So we've got some global representation in terms of how this works around the world. And our Practitioner Council will be actively involved in developing and further developing the practitioner qualifications. So if we can just move on to the next slide, then just a couple of other things that just to explain how AI PMO are getting its findings out into the world and into the users. First of all, we've got 3 publishing partners, whereby, as Robert said, he does a number of editing with research findings and reports that are coming out, papers, yes, the journals that are coming out, to look at it from a PMO perspective and actually kind of do that reflection and look at what it means from a PMO perspective, but also provides access to publishing some of the research that is undertaken and driven by AI PMO. If we have a look at the academic partners, there are a number of universities, and perhaps, Robert, you might just want to kind of pick up and explain some of the things that you're doing with the academic partners, because they're certainly starting to develop now as the body of work is being recognised.
That's right. Thank you, Eileen. So what we're trying to do is to actually create a career for PMO people. So it's not just finishing off at the expert level. We have actually a mini master, so it actually allows you to get 3 credits, and that actually it allows you then to get credits to a full MSc. So working with the Swiss Business School with the aim of setting up the faculty for PMOs and project management, project leadership, where you get 3 credits and then do a full MSc. And then for the full MSc, it's actually the first one in the world that is actually on project leadership and PMOs. And strategy, so strategy, project leadership, and PMOs. If you want to get past or do further than that, you can then go up to a DBA, Doctor of Business Administration. And as Eileen said, is that we have various topics that we are researching or that we are looking into. We have theories around it and then looking for research students. So when I teach, invariably every class that I give, and I've actually been mainly focused in the Middle East at the moment, and also in Asia, is that we find at least 1 or 2 people that would like to take either the MSc or the DBA and then take on a topic that we need further research. The other universities, for example, Aarhus University, is that they have asked us to teach the master level to their students. So it's a 3-week, it's just mini masters, and we're actually teaching it to their master students. And it's already fully booked. There's 40 people, and it's actually going to be held this year. So this will be an ongoing basis, and it's quite likely that the other, either the practitioner board or the academic board will then teach the mini masters at summer schools as well around the world.
Excellent, thank you, Robert. And then the final one, if we could just kind of go to the final slide on the organisation structure, these regional partners. Now, interestingly, unlike other professional bodies, we're not actually accrediting kind of training organisation per se. What we're looking for is true regional partners who will contribute to the ongoing kind of body of knowledge that will be kind of developed and supported by AI PMO. So as Robert mentioned, to date, there's been a significant amount of work being done, and a lot of that has been kind of delivered through courses out in the Middle East through Causal Capital, who were the initial regional partners. And then last year, PMO Learning was signed up, and we are the UK partners now for AI PMO. So it will involve delivery of the training courses and the certification training, which is why we're on the call today. But also it will, as you'll see through our kind of sister company, PMO Flashmob, that provision of kind of focus groups and continuing to develop that knowledge around, not just within the UK, but also finding that knowledge from around the world. So we're really excited to be kind of linked up with AI PMO. And we are in kind of conversation now with a couple of other parties looking at developing other regional partners for other parts of the globe. But from getting the practitioner certifications, it will be delivered directly by the regional partners in your particular area of the world. So if we just go on to the next slide, what I want to do is just give a quick overview of the different levels of certification. And it's potentially something that you've probably seen if you've looked at our website at the different levels. I just want to briefly talk about what the various different levels are. This first one is about the AIPMO Foundation Certificate. The Foundation Certificate is aimed at those individuals who work in a PMO. And what we'll be doing in the foundation course is really focusing on the provision of services for the customers of that PMO. And we recognise that that PMO could be at project or programme level, and potentially some of the kind of the services that might be done at portfolio level, though usually we kind of leave that for the practitioner or the expert courses, although we will kind of touch on that. And we will look at what kind of capabilities need to be developed, how we monitor and control those services. When we hit the practitioner level, we're really starting to look at those people who manage a PMO. And it could be one or more PMOs. And therefore, what we're starting to look at then is about how we actually decide on the services, how we set those up and manage that overall PMO, and how we do the kind of the transformation of those PMOs to continue to be what the organisation needs it to be. And obviously, as we're kind of doing that, developing the maturity of the PMOs that we're working within. Once we get to the expert level, we're really starting to look at PMO directors. So these are individuals who are sitting at the kind of the top of the PMO training organisation and are starting to kind of think more strategically around how can PMOs support the organisation to deliver their strategy. What can we kind of drive across the organisation that's going to not just improve kind of the PMO services and the maturity, but actually make a difference to the bottom line in an organisation. So we're very much looking at that kind of that overall perspective. And quite interestingly, even though we might think down at the kind of the foundation and the practitioner level around some of the services and functions that we deliver, making some of those decisions at an organisational level can have a direct impact to the success or otherwise of the projects and programmes that we're delivering. So those are the three kind of key certifications, the practitioner certifications that we'll be delivering as PMO Learning. And I think there is just kind of one more, if we just kind of pop the button once more, just to kind of see that that AIPMO Masters that sits above that takes a much broader view and kind of almost kind of takes a kind of management and leadership perspective around the kind of the PMO. I think the real richness of the certifications and why they differ from the other kind of certifications we offer is really kind of, the part of it is here shown in terms of the actually kind of where the alignment is. So we offer the BCS PSO certifications and obviously the P3O certifications. The foundation and the practitioner have alignment in terms of levels, but really the AIPMO expert is really a step above even the kind of the P3O practitioner or the advanced practitioner around PPSO. And having written the standard for P3O and being an accredited trainer, I recognise that from a P3O perspective, we look really kind of at the process of kind of setting a P3O up. What the AIPMO does is provide an awful lot more thinking around that in a slightly different way. And I think the way we can kind of look at that in a little bit more detail is by looking at what underpins this certification, which is what we call the AIPMO PMO Lifecycle framework, which is an awful big mouthful. But this is effectively what that looks like. So if you look at the kind of the blue and grey bit right in the middle in terms of identify, evaluate and strategize, design and justification, pilot and implementation, run, transform or retire, you hopefully will recognise is a life cycle that any PMO, regardless of where it sits in the organisation, will go through. However, around that is so much more that kind of feeds into how and when that needs to be done and who needs to be involved, and again about how that is affected by different external factors, both external to the organisation, but also external to the PMO itself. And so if we just kind of walk through the next slide, I just want to show you where the particular focus is. So from a foundation certificate, although we will always cover off in some detail the overall life cycle framework, from a foundation perspective, what we spend the majority of our time on is we're actually kind of sitting and running the services that sit within that PMO. So we look about those kind of capabilities and how we develop the capabilities required, and we'll also look at how we monitor and control all of those kind of services. So what you can hear in the background are Swiss bells of the Swiss clock, so apologies for that. So that's the foundation certificate. If we go on to the next slide, we can see that the focus of the practitioner is actually the PMO lifecycle itself. Understanding kind of obviously how that kind of sets up from the business needs itself, but also around all of those kind of things that will potentially impact that. And when we're looking at monitoring and control here, we're not just looking at monitoring and controlling the individual services. What we're looking at is monitoring and control of the PMO or a number of PMOs. So there's the kind of the next level of governance and management around that. And then finally, if we look at the expert one, and I say this is where I think it kind of it steps up above other certifications that are out there from a PMO. It actually looks at it from a top-down approach. So on the next slide, please. It looks at the organisation strategy and the enterprise environmental factors, and looks at the kind of the vision, mission and strategy and how that drives what is going to be undertaken by each of the PMOs that sit within the overall, what we've called the enterprise-wide PMO topology. So that's the kind of, that's where the focus for each of those certifications are. What doesn't come across particularly well in kind of a slide set like this is about how our approach to delivery of the knowledge and the achievement of the certification takes place. But I just want to, before I kind of just go on to that, so it depends on what I'm going to say next, is I just want, if Lindsay can kind of pull up the next poll. So based on the kind of brief insight I've given into the 3 levels of certification, I'm just quite interested in terms of what you feel might be the level of certification that is most appropriate from you, from where you are at the moment. So you've got the choice of the foundation, practitioner or expert. Actually, Eileen, you've not said anything that's made any sense to me so far, so I'm still not sure. Or actually, I don't think any of it is appropriate for me. And we'll just kind of pick up some of the additional things in terms of why the AI PMO is a richer certification than some of the others that are on the marketplace at the moment. So hopefully that people have pulled that through. Have we got some results there? There we go. So actually we've got an awful lot of people who are interested in the practitioner, a number who are interested in the foundation, and actually quite a healthy number who are interested in the expert level certification. So for those of you who are not sure, we've got some contact details at the end, so if you do want to have any more information, we can give you that. So if we can just go on to the next slide, which just talks about the body of knowledge that we're working to. Now, having been involved, as mentioned, in developing the P30 standard, but also in developing things like the APM body of knowledge, and having lots of kind of conversations about, is the body of knowledge a book? What does that actually mean? Can we write it all down in a textbook? And what we is generally recognised that actually the body of knowledge not only is available in text, but actually it's also all of the knowledge around the profession that hasn't yet been fully articulated or shared or standardised into a text. And this is where the academic council and the practitioner councils are actually driving the ongoing increase in that kind of the size and the content of the body of knowledge. And what the AI PMO are trying to do is to kind of pull some of that and kind of provide some standard text that will represent some of that body of knowledge, but the rest of the developing body of knowledge, or some of the rest of the developing body of knowledge, is the kind of things that we'll actually cover off in the courseware. So just to there's some books there on the screen. So the PMO Principles was published last year, so that's available on Amazon. That talks about 7 underlying principles that would underpin any PMO, regardless of where it sits in the organisation. And then we've currently got 3 books that are currently in the process, have been developed at the moment. The PMO Standard, which really distills the PMO Lifecycle framework to its very distinct elements that are, I want to say concrete, but I'm ever so conscious that the world continues to move. But we're going to put down a standard that people can go back to and refer to as a standard for PMOs. We've got a group who are developing a book around the tools and techniques that are used within PMOs at project, program and portfolio level. That is involved a whole lot of research and classification of the tools in terms of how and what they're used for. And then we're also writing a practitioner book from single to enterprise-wide PMO. So those books are currently underway. And as I mentioned, a lot of the thinking that is being developed and currently being researched is the kind of things that we cover on the course. So, for example, we mentioned the fact that PMO maturity is not something that has been firmly established or agreed. There's no industry standard for PMO maturity. And actually, there's some really interesting concepts to think about in terms of, well, actually, what are you measuring? Are we measuring the impact? Are we measuring the skills and capabilities of the individuals who work with there? Are we measuring it against the principles? And, saying, well, actually, you're more mature if you've got more of the principles embedded. So even looking at the dimensions of maturity, it is still really up for debate and as the research going on. And these are the types of things that we will be discussing, particularly on the expert course, to understand how that might change our thinking around what we do in our PMOs as an individual PMO, or actually across our PMOs across the organisation. Some of the work at the moment that the PMO Flash Mob is doing is about developing a competency framework. And again, there's no industry standard for competency framework. So that again is something we can discuss, and something we do discuss on the course around what is the the current thinking, where are people developing, what are the things that are missing. So actually it not just feeds into this ongoing body of knowledge, but actually it helps us in our role as PMO managers and PMO directors to do more forward thinking about how we can get our PMOs to add value to the organisation. And I know it's an interesting term, this the value out of a PMO. And funnily enough, that's another one of the subjects that we discuss. So when you attend one of the courses, an AI PMO course, it is really a an opportunity to think more broadly at whatever level you're going to be working at, whether that be foundation, practitioner or expert. There's a lot more flex in the topic areas that we covered off, rather than sticking to just an individual manual. And we will, there are obviously some standard topics that we will go through, and we'll cover off some base knowledge. But a lot of the things that we do, we'll explore through a case study that covers off through the course, or actually through the discussions and wider thinking that we do. So if we just go on to the next slide. Just in terms of what do those certifications look like, and how do we achieve certification? This is not one of those certifications where you can just ship up and do the exam. We recognise that if you're going to be AI PMO certified, that actually we will have had some of that broader thinking around whatever level you work at. And certainly we would hope that anybody who attends the AI PMO course will continue to be involved in those discussions and contribute through some focus groups into the Practitioner Council, and those of you who may be interested to go on to do some further academic study as well. So the course attendance is mandatory. On a foundation course, that's a 4-day course. Again, has got a case study that runs through that. There is an exam on the final afternoon. It's a 1-hour exam with 50 questions. And we've got a date scheduled for that in April in London. And I believe there's going to be another one in Dubai coming up as well. The practitioner course is a 5-day course, and the exam is slightly longer and slightly harder, 75 multiple choice questions in an hour and a half. We've got that scheduled in on the 14th to the 18th of May. And the one, interestingly, in terms of the mixture of individuals on this call and the types of certification they're interested in, the expert course is the first one we decided to run, and we've got one running in 2 weeks' time on the 12th to the 16th of March. I think we've still got a couple of spaces going on that one, and then we're running another course immediately following the PMO conference, which will be running in June. So those are the 3 different certifications. As I said, course attendance is mandatory, so we can have some of those conversations and develop some of the thinking as we go through the materials.
Can I just one question that's very relevant at this point, please, Eileen? We've had a question about, do you have to have the foundation and the practitioner before you do the expert level course? How does it work?
Well, we'd like to say yes, but that's a bit harsh for those of you who are sitting at or working at an expert level and the AI PMO certifications haven't been around. So one of the things that we will be doing before people sign up for the expert course, we will be having a conversation with you just to make sure you're at that right level. What we don't want people, and it's not good for the individuals, but it's also not necessarily good for the other people on the course. We want people to attend the course that is the right level for them, so they can have the right level of conversation. And if you're attending an expert course, you know you're going to be having lots of conversations with other experts. So you don't have to, but we will be doing some kind of prerequisites to make sure you're working at that right level. I think the other thing as well that's worth saying is that there is an expectation that there's probably at least a 12-month period if you're doing the foundation course, and that's the right level for you. It would typically be at least 12 months before you might want to do the practitioner course or ready to do the practitioner course. And again, typically, and not everybody's typical, but typically it would be another 12 months before you move on to the expert course. So I'm conscious, I know Lindsay said this was going to be an hour. I'm conscious that it isn't an hour, but I just really wanted to give you an oversight really around the 3 different levels, who they're aimed at. And I wanted to give you an indication of the difference, why AI PMO certifications are different to the other ones that are out there, and also about recognising this ongoing drive to build the body of knowledge and share it more broadly. The contact details are there. The information around each of the courses is on our website. There's a telephone number there if people want to contact us. But other than that, if there's any questions you think I need to pick up, happy to do that now.
Okay.
I see some questions, actually. I'm looking at them now. So shall I have a start with the questions? And I think, Eileen, you can see if you sort of pop out the question as well. So the first one is
from... I think Lindsay's going to bring the questions up. Are you, Lindsay?
Yeah, it's I've got quite a few. Let's go back to the certification itself. We talked about, obviously, certifications are based on latest research and so on. Is the research ongoing, and when do you expect to update the current version of the framework? How does it work in terms of incorporating new research, new insights?
So I think there's a number of different aspects to that. The courses, and it's one of the challenges as somebody who's going to be delivering some of these courses, is that gets updated very regularly. So, you attend the expert course now in 6 months' time, even the core materials will stay the same, but actually some of the extended topics and some of the other conversations may differ with kind of as the research has gone on. So again, that's the beauty of having the academic council who are continually feeding that through. So obviously it's not going to be changing every week, but new things will come out. Our view is that the standard and the underlying kind of framework will probably be updated every kind of 2 years or so, just to kind of make sure that's absolutely standard. That's what standards are. But actually, we don't want to kind of inhibit it by saying that's everything that we've got. So one of the things that we do, as if you attend and are successful, you will have access to the AI PMO website, and some of that kind of ongoing research will be made available for individuals to share and continue to contribute to. So course materials will flex other than the core pieces. The textbooks we are looking at perhaps a kind of a 2-year renewal cycle.
And just to follow on from that question then, with participants be able to, you mentioned that they're able to access some of the newer materials or reports or research that's coming out. I'm assuming that's, you become part of the AI PMO website, and there's no additional costs incurred in that?
Not at this point at the moment. The costs of the certification will allow you access now as we kind of continue to develop, and as the kind of the membership and membership of the AI PMO develops. That may change as we offer more services in the future. I think going back to kind of one of the earlier slides, the AI PMO has really been established now for coming up kind of for 2 years as a membership body, and that will continue to develop and grow. So no additional cost at the moment, but that may not be permanent.
Okay, and another question, how long are each of the certificates valid for? Will a resit be required after a set period of time?
It reminds me when Prince 2 was first launched, or even Prince before it became Prince 2, is at the moment we have not got a renewal cycle. What we are looking to do is, as the membership develops and as it continues to grow, that what we want to do is treat it like any other profession. So if you work in HR, if you work in finance, then every year you get an update to say this is how the thinking has changed and moved on. So what we're looking, and the plans are, is that we will provide an annual update for members at the various levels so they can maintain their currency of their certification. But not as yet. That's not been finalised.
Just a couple of other kind of side questions, really. If you're taking this course, and certainly the exam, and English is not your first language, do you get extra time to be able to complete that examination?
We can make allowances, and we're duty bound to make allowances for people with, and it's not just English is your first language. If there is anything else that might create you difficulty in kind of doing the exam in the time, we'll deal with that. I'd just say, if that is the case, it's very useful to know that before the course, so we can kind of manage to that. But certainly the trainers will be asking the delegates of that on the first day, so we can kind of make sure any arrangements are in place.
Okay. And finally, what kind of costs are we talking about? What's the investment here for people?
I think, so I'm just trying to remember the costs off the top of my head, Lindsay.
You're looking at about, it's about £2,500 for the foundation, about 2,700 for the practitioner, and it goes up to 2,999 for the expert. So yeah, it's a big investment. And
thank you, Lindsay. And I think that's recognition of two things, really. One is that, as we've kind of said, and really what I wanted to explore in this webinar, is that breadth of knowledge and the amount of kind of the size of the body of knowledge that we will tap into as we go through the delivery of that course. Secondly, as well, is the any trainer that you get who is delivering these courses, they will not be sitting reading from the textbook. it will be individuals who are experienced PMO managers who have spent some time contributing to that body of knowledge and are continuing to contribute to that body of knowledge, and will encourage you to broaden your thinking and challenge you in terms of kind of what you're currently doing within your PMO. So, in terms of we recognise that this is not a kind of ship for 5 days, kind of pay some money, tutor will talk for a manual and you'll sit your exam on the Friday. It is a much kind of different type of certification than that.
Okay, just one final question. Why do the PMO experts only do an hour for the exam?
Because that should say 2 hours. That's not that the experts do it in an hour. That's just because Eileen did a typing error. So it's a 2-hour exam for the expert. Well spotted.
And just another one, are there any plans to do this online? In fact, is it even possible to do this kind of course online? What would you say to that?
It is not anticipated. Some of the richness, and again, talking about that kind of those broader discussions, is much more difficult to really kind of drive on an online community. So for the foreseeable, we definitely see this as being a kind of a classroom-based course. I think it is worth recognising, actually, just while I think on, although we are kind of delivering these publicly, we are more than happy to come and deliver them in-house for an organisation, or even kind of cross-share. So if we've got a number of organisations and they want to run them in-house rather than completely open to the public, then we're happy to do that. You can get in touch with us directly at kind of PMO Learning, and we'll have those conversations too, because sometimes that's quite useful, doing it in-house.
Yeah, and also we've got different locations obviously planned. Yes. We've just got London. It's just obviously the most populated area to gauge the take up, really. So yes, absolutely, it is in our plans that we will be delivering them in different locations as well. And as Eileen said, there's also that option to bring it in house. So in terms of no further questions. So just to wrap up, I'd like to thank you for your time. We will be in touch with obviously the recording and also the slide set. If you're coming back to the poll, if you're still unsure about the certifications and AIPMO, please do have a look at the blogs as well, because we will be writing a lot more about the courses. We have got experiences to share from people who went on the course last year about what they found really useful for them in their careers so far since they've done that in the last 6 months. So there's a lot of different types of insights. It's a new thing. It's obviously a new certification. There's bound to be questions. And we're more than happy to take them through the website. And but also, as Eileen shared, contact details, you can get in touch with either Eileen or myself. My name is lindsay.scott@pmolearning.co.uk. And you're quite right that somebody has just pointed out that actually there's a digit missing on that phone number. So Eileen, you just need to be careful with your fingers. It's 0207 164 6901. Okay, so thank you very much, Eileen. Thank you very much, Robert.
Can I just say before we go, we're also at Project Challenge next week. So if anybody's in and around London next week, drop into Project Challenge and come and have a face-to-face conversation with us.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.